when I was first asked to do this, I really wanted to think about what the motivation might be for you wanting to become a coach or get involved in coaching. If you look at some of the reasons that we coaches share with us when they start the coaching courses, obviously a lot of clubs want to get more juniors involved, particularly when they want to keep clubs going and to grow their membership. Because if you think about it logically, juniors are going to be the future of your club. And the saddest thing, I think, is if you've put all your time and effort into developing a club and you get to a point where you feel that you can't manage that any longer, where's that next generation of people going to come along from? Where do they appear? A lot of people say about getting something back, and I think that's really important as well. We're all lovers of angling. We've all been angling all our lives, and you get to a point where you feel that you'd like to put something back into the sport and support other people learning something that you really enjoyed. The other thing that's becoming quite common now is because a lot of anglers are a little bit more aged, shall we say. I wouldn't like to say white male and star, but that's the sort of demographic that anglers have. And a lot of people are retiring a little bit earlier and want to keep doing something, keep themselves active, and earn a little bit of pin money, doing little bits of coaching here, there, and everywhere. And other people are motivated by wanting to find that piece of gold, that angler or that performer that is going to go all the way and become a really top quality angler. And those are all valid reasons. My reasons for coaching really is about wanting to make people feel special. And I think right from the word go for that first level 1 course, there were 2 sentences that came out of the educator's mouth. The first one was that coaching was all about communication, and the second statement was that good coaches coach a sport, great coaches coach people. And that's always been my philosophy when I've been delivering over the past 35, 40 years. So what's happened lately, to give you some of the background, and I know some of you might be involved with the new insurance requirements, etc., etc. Historically, there was a review called the White Review into historical abuse in British gymnastics, and that looked at all aspects of sport right the way across all 46 sports across the country, and it's had a massive effect on everything, not just safeguarding, but coaching, and obviously the insurance companies have picked that up, and how that's going to affect things going forward. And if I was perfectly honest, you probably realise that we run a coach licence scheme. In fact, currently in law, there is nothing to stop yourself calling yourself a coach. You don't need any formal qualifications. You don't need any insurance. You don't need this. You don't need that. But that is slowly changing. And there's an organisation called CIMSPA, the Chartered Institute of Management, Sport and Physical Activity, who are trying to get a professional standard introduced across all sports. And from that, there will be a national register of coaches, and the term coach will then be almost branded and copyrighted, and people who want to coach or call themselves coaches will have to adhere to this professional standard. And that's what we're trying to do now with our coaching courses, is to try and align everything that we do with those professional standards, so that going forward they can be recognised nationally across all sports. Those of you who've got a bit of a coaching background might remember that UKCC had the same idea, but they haven't had the same sort of clout and investment that Sport England are putting in currently, following the impact of the White Review. So from June last year, the existing level 2 course, the League Coach Award, which funny enough was only 2 years old anyway, that was taken off the shelf by First for Sport. And they'll also be removing the level 1 qualification from April this year, and we've had to look at replacements and different ways that we can do this. And there's two options really. The first option is to write something that is really bespoke for angling, that suits our needs, that engages people in angling and keeps them engaged going forward. Or we could go down the performance route, where instead of just looking at getting people involved in angling perhaps for 6 to 12 months, it's looking at that performance route all the way through to match angling. And what we felt was that focus could be a good thing, looking at performance, but actually the majority of anglers, or the majority of people that want to be coached, want to come in, learn to fish, and then spend that time learning by themselves or going off and fishing, rather than thinking about they've got to have something structured like you get in football or cricket over 5 or 6 years in leagues and stuff like that. So that's the reason behind the new course, and we've focused in on that, and we've entitled that Angling Lead Coach at level 2, and it's awards. And the difference between an award and a certificate is the learning hours. So at level 2 award is 180 learning hours, and what that comes down to basically is a weekend, 2 days of training, if you like, from the coach educator. You then go away and do 4 link sessions, and after those 4 link sessions you come back and you do an assessment. Going forward, in addition to that, obviously we're going to lose our level 1. We realise that not everybody has got experience of coaching, not everybody has got great angling knowledge. We wanted to provide a sort of a stepping stone into that level 2 award, and we'll be developing and releasing a new 1-day qualification called a volunteer support coach. We're going to entitle Step Into Coaching, and that really will give those people that initial set of skills, if you like, and techniques to take forward and to go away and work under the auspices of a level 2 event lead coach, possibly in a mentoring role, so that they can come forward and then actually take hold of that event lead and lead events on their own, rather than just act as support coaches. Excuse me. Okay, so from the main award is going to be the level 2 award, lead coach, but we wanted to make sure that for those people that wanted to go on that performance pathway, that, or perhaps work across a wider or broader spectrum of people at their club, that they could upgrade their level 2 award to a level 2 certificate, which we're calling Angling Club Coach, and that looks at program coaches coaching over a period of 12 months for clubs, and that will be available hopefully from April. It's in partnership with an online company called Sport Structures. All the evidence from your level 2 award is mapped into that level 2 certificate, but there are additional items such as things like learning styles, managing people, etc., to bump that up to the level 2 certificate in coaching. And that will then allow you to sit on the professional framework that SimSpra are trying to introduce. And then finally, it's been a long time coming, but we're looking at a level 3 program coach, and that's really for people who want to be looking at the performance elements, so match anglers, whether that's course, sea or game, and those will be looking at longer programs. To use some of the coaching speak, macro, meso and micro cycles around coaching performance, and probably looking at 2 to 3 years of development of a particular angler, or a very, very small group of anglers. So it's quite niche, and it will be quite intense. And like I say, that's been looked at as well, and probably be out in autumn of this year, 2024. So let's have a look at the content of the event coach course currently, just to give you some ideas of what sort of things are covered in it. So we talk about coaching philosophy. Okay, so as a coach, what's important to you? What things are important to you? Why you want to be a coach? What your motivations? What do you want from the course? and how can we support you in achieving what you want to. We then look at the roles and responsibilities of that particular event coach. So, you know, what if you were going to write a job description for a level 2 event coach, what would that entail? And then more importantly, actually going forward, what are those responsibilities? And then the main difference between sort of level 1 and level 2, as was, is the level 2 coaches taking responsibility for risk assessment. And that risk assessment is particularly around the coaching area, coaching environment, where you're going to be delivering, and how you manage that process, how you assess risk, how you assess the likelihood and the severity of any hazards that might be there, and more importantly, how you mitigate those to reduce the risk down so that it's really safe for everybody that's about. We then look at games. So we ask you to design a game, an angling game. And just to give you a bit of background to that, to produce an elite or an enhanced performer, it takes 10,000 hours of purposeful practice. So if you want to learn to cast, if you think about casting into water, you can probably do that 10 or 15 times in a 3 or 4 hour session if you're actually fishing. If you've got a game where you're casting every 5 or 6 seconds, obviously the amount of casting that you can get into those number of hours, it improves greatly. And it's really a bit of a shortcut in trying to get you proficient technically, but also tactically. We look at physical elements of angling. So it's one area that we currently don't look at in angling. You know, why aren't anglers physically fit? You know, why anglers aren't so strong? Why don't we encourage anglers to keep themselves fit so that they don't get injured? You know, and we look at things like nutrition, around lifestyle. So it was stated, how do you start to match? You know, what's your diet like? Well, I have a bacon sandwich and 3 cans of Monster. Actually, would you be performing better if you had a healthy diet and you turned up, you're physically fit and your mind was sharp because you've got a good diet, etc., etc.? How would that improve you? And then finally, the big one is we look at the mental aspects of performance, and the mental aspects cover confidence, control, commitment, and confidence. And those are the big ones, really. If you want to improve somebody, work on the mental part of their session, so you can perform 33% better if you're mentally in the right place, or you can conversely perform 33% worse. And then if you're a match fisherman who got to the last sort of half an hour or 15 minutes and you don't know, you haven't caught, and you're throwing in everything and doing everything you possibly can, actually, is that the right mental approach, or can you do some training where you can look at the what ifs to give you structured planning so that you don't panic at the end of it? And then finally, within that, at one time, the old level 2, you had to do a separate course through UK coaching around safeguarding. We've now incorporated that into the qualification, and that's around leading safe events. And that looks at sort of the reasons of why we look at policies and procedures, profiles of abuse, and then we also then do a risk assessment for a whole event. So we look at various aspects of it. So things like, you know, what happens if we've got no toilets? Where do people park? How do we arrange for children to be picked up and dropped off? What happens if a child goes missing? Those kind of things. So it's quite a contextual type of safeguarding module, rather than just talking about sexual, physical, emotional, and neglect as forms of abuse, but actually how we can put some positive stuff into delivering safe events, especially around some of our programs like get fishing and stuff like that. Okay, the main thrust of the course is to give you the tools to support all those outcomes, and I've always called it a coaching tool bag, but it splits into 2 areas really. So we use some skills. So we'll teach you how to explain things properly, how to give instructions, and more importantly, how to check that people actually understand what they're supposed to do, how to give a demonstration, how to use open questions, which is probably the hardest thing to do at all stages. How to give constructive praise. So that's not just about saying well done, but why is that well done, and how does that relate back to the actual subject of the coaching points that you're trying to get over. And then the main difference between this and level one is that we look at observe, analyze, and giving feedback. So how do we observe things? How do we then use technical models within our own head to analyze stuff? And then finally, how do we decide where we're going to intervene, what we're going to do to make things different, and how we're going to give that feedback constructively, so that we get the best out of the people that we're actually coaching. I'm really keen on self-review as well. So we ask learners after they've delivered a session to review how things went. What went really well, what things could you consider, or what things might you do differently next time. And that's really an important tool for coaches, because even for somebody like me who's spent, I don't know, 3,500 hours coaching in schools, I've reviewed every session that I've done, just to fine-tune stuff and keep things moving. And things do change, and there's always always some way better of doing something that you've gone, or if something went particularly pear-shaped, what could you do to avoid that happening in the future. How to make sessions safe, and more importantly, how to make them fun. Because if you're having fun as a learner, you're gonna get more out of the sessions, rather than just being talked to for half an hour about shotting patterns and floats and stuff like that. A 5-year-old or 6-year-old child is not going to be particularly enamored with that, but chuck them on and get them fishing and catching a fish straight away, they're going to be active and they're going to be engaged pretty quickly. And then finally, how to plan. So how we're planning things going forward, how we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks of delivery, and where we want these people to get to. Have we got people that are particularly good at angling? Can we move them on more quickly? Or and how we can treat within our groups that we're coaching, how we can treat each of those people individually to get the best out of them. And again, for me, it's about making each of those people feel special and valued within that delivery. And then on the other side of the equation is the fishy bits. Okay, so we look at complex movements such as casting, and within that we might identify coaching points. Okay, so what are the key coaching points within, let's say, a back casting game angling, and that might be to do with feet position, it might be to do with flex knees, it might be to do with hip and shoulder alignment. Normally it's to do with rod path, and accelerating to a stop. And we talk about that quite a lot. I'll leave you with a question to think about, and that's, when does a technique become a skill? And that might be something that you want to answer within the course. And we divide those up into two things, two titles. The first is the how-to. So explain, instruct, demonstrate are all the how-to skills. So those are all the soft skills that we need as coaches. And then the what-to is the angling bits, if you like. And that stretches to, obviously, not just a technique, but tactics, some of the physical stuff, warm-ups, cool downs, etc., etc. And I've always worried that, and particularly myself when I did my level 3 in cricket, where I was involved with some of the top players in the country during the course, and I didn't feel that I was as good a cricketer as them. But actually, if you look at those two lists, actually what I got was a really strong left-hand side. So I'd got a really strong coaching tool bag. And although the information on the other side perhaps wasn't as high as some of the others, I could find out bits and pieces. And the strange thing was that coach, there was 20 people on the course, only 2 of us passed, and we were both be polite village cricketers, rather than ex-professionals who were coming into the game, because a lot of professionals, a lot of good sports people don't quite understand the processes that sit behind their performance, because they've spent so long just enjoying what they do. So once you've got your qualification, we then move on to our coach license scheme, which we're really proud of. We were one of the first sports in the country to actually adopt it. and it really is a strong point within our organisation. And the coach license scheme, most importantly of all, includes insurance, and that insurance covers you at any venue, not just your own club waters. You can take responsibility for a session as an event lead coach anywhere in the country. It also includes a DBS check. So we monitor that every 3 years to ensure that there's nothing new on your DBS, and it does give us a sort of a vehicle to make checks on people. And if you're going to work in schools or in other organisations that ask for some sort of level of check, the enhanced workforce DBS check, which we offer free for coaches, is the best one out there. Not only does it now include young people, but also adult workforce as well. So if you're working with vulnerable adults, so people with disabilities or people with mental illness and stuff like that, then that is a great document to have and to show. The only thing you can't do within the course is a first aid course, and you have to get that from somewhere else. We normally recommend doing it online, and you can get, as long as it's got CPR in it, the insurance company's happy with that. So you can get it for about £15. If you want to do a more expensive one with St John's, then it's about 60 quid. But we also highlight using the St John's app, which is really good. It can sit on your phone, and actually if you have an incident, you're not sure what to do with it, the app can talk you through it. And all that is included in your course fee. So it's free for the first year, and then you just renew it annually going forward from there.